Okay, there is such a ridiculous clown world scripted circus surrounding Donald Trump's inauguration that it's hard to know where to even begin with everything that's happened the last few days. However, for better or worse, I'm going to start with the symbolic narrative. And to do that, I will begin with what is up on the screen here. Trump announces up to $500 billion in private sector AI infrastructure investment. President Trump announced Tuesday billions of dollars in private sector investment to build artificial intelligence infrastructure in the United States. OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle are planning a joint venture called Stargate, Mr. Trump said in a White House briefing. Unbelievable, right? They have openly associated Donald Trump with Stargate now. Before, we were only inferring that from all of the metaphorical subconscious symbolism that was attached to him. We were able to infer that there's some kind of Stargate aspect going on here as it relates to his affiliation through the propaganda with 9/11, because there are a lot of Stargate aspects to that blood sacrifice ritual that they conducted in New York City on September 11th, 2001. Obviously, the primary way to get into this idea is through the quote-unquote monolith that was existing at Ground Zero, known as the Millennium Hilton Hotel. In the books, these monoliths represent leaps in evolution, and many people suspect that as they were depicted by Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey, they were sort of representing the actual screen that you were viewing the movie on, which then could be attached to the idea of the screen itself being some kind of evolutionary Stargate, transforming consciousness itself from one thing into another, or put another way, taking it from one place to another, as you would interpret the idea of a Stargate, as they have shown it in the movie itself, titled Stargate, right? Where they actually show these characters going through the Stargate and ending up in a realm that is very Egyptian. So naturally, there is a lot of Egypt tied into this as well. Principally through the fact that the Great American Eclipse crossed paths in what is known as Little Egypt, Carbondale, Illinois. As you can see here, the first path in 2017 and the second path in 2024. But there was always this tie-in to quote-unquote artificial intelligence because the screen is now indistinguishable from the internet. Even televisions are computers now. There are no more traditional televisions as we knew them. Every television, for the most part, is a computer that you access apps through just like you would access them on your phone or your computer. In this way, the monolith is the screen. And in terms of evolution, it represents this idea of taking the mind as it exists currently in the human body and turning it into literal artificial intelligence. Because he died before the film was actually made, people tend to forget that Stanley Kubrick's next project was going to be artificial intelligence, which would put the bow on the entire ritual. He just never got a chance to do it, so they brought in Spielberg to finish it. But the ultimate evolutionary leap then, in reference to the monolith, or the screen, is us merging with it. Both in terms of consciousness itself, but also in terms of the actual literal biology eventually fusing with technology. And in that way, we will merge with artificial intelligence, quote unquote, whether or not they actually create something sentient with roots as a machine. Something that would have a consciousness similar to us, but existing within machinery, existing within the internet itself. In other words, the symbolic programming associated with Donald Trump is functioning on so many different levels that it's hard to encapsulate all of them in one sentence. Our words fail us in this way. We can't extrapolate how big the concept is with these words. But one layer is that he represents the Stargate through which our minds will be transformed. And if you can look at the internet right now and see the fake hysteria going on, you can kind of see that on a mundane level. How the ritual they infused into Donald Trump through all of the propaganda associated with him is turning the human mind into something else. And ultimately, they will steer the mind through the hysteria into what I am describing here, taking it from one place into another. A quantum leap, which is why he is associated with that as well. Eagle Pass, during a leap year, on a leap day. Leaping consciousness from one place into the next. And they show you this very explicitly by giving Trump his own monolith in the United Nations Plaza, because this United Nations monolith itself represents what this finished product will be. This represents the so-called golden age. In a way, it's like they're attempting to stop time. If you go into the book of Revelation, which I will a little bit, as it relates to the New Jerusalem and the golden age that's described there, it's like confining our collective mind into technology will somehow, in their estimation, stop that which created us from coming back here and doing what it said it was going to do at the end of the story. Somehow, the plan here is to stop all of that by stopping time, by creating a parallel reality, as it were, where the time stream splits off into this new dimension where human beings literally turn into something else, a different species that has merged with machines. Or a better way to put it is merged with the internet. The machinery aspect of it probably won't be necessary at a certain point. Our consciousness itself will literally merge into the internet. And through that lens, you can kind of see why they associated Donald Trump with Back to the Future and Donnie Darko and all of these other pieces of propaganda that are talking about time travel or parallel realities or something along those lines. And then he has this extra added association with eclipses. Born on a total lunar eclipse during a blood moon, he's this eclipse baby moon child that then symbolically is eclipsing not only America, but eclipsing the mind itself. Not that he will literally eclipse the mind, right? But they will use him and the propaganda that they have infused into him to eclipse our mind, to shape it into something new through the internet, in the internet age. Remember, this is the Golden Gate in Jerusalem. It has the same shape as these two golden arches that we know as the McDonald's logo. But these arches are stargates. It's a path from one place into another, which is most likely why Donald Trump was so intimately tied into McDonald's. He probably doesn't even like the food. I mean, maybe he does, I don't know. But the point is, they associated the golden arches with him because he is the Stargate through which they enter the Golden Gate, or the Golden Age. A portal into another dimension. In the context of all of that, one of the first things that Donald Trump does as president for the second time, remembering that this is the second plane crashing into the second tower, metaphorically speaking, he announces this joint venture called Stargate involving artificial intelligence. There you go. And in that context, the Golden Gate to the Golden Age on a plane. In other words, a different plane of existence. Which I think is why planes were used as a part of that original 9/11 ritual. Planes striking those towers and bringing them down so that something new could rise from the ashes, like a phoenix, which of course is where we first saw this logo in Phoenix, Arizona, because that's how this stuff works. But unbelievable in all of that context that we have this Stargate project announced by Donald Trump today. And a lot of people have been talking about his wife's outfit at the inauguration, saying, hey, it looks like V for Vendetta. Oh, it looks like this, it looks like that. But notice this very strategically taken picture and the angle it gives you to where her head is eclipsed here by the hat. And it almost looks like she's going through a black hole. It's a very Saturnian hat as well, which could relate to the cube and the New Jerusalem, which is said to be a cube, and how all of that Saturnian programming might be functioning on this level, why that is always kind of present in all of this, because it kind of represents something that crystallizes in the mind, this confined crystallization of consciousness that they control. But just more broadly, her head is almost going into a black hole. It's between worlds. It's on its way from one golden arch into another, one portal into the next, transferring somewhere. There have been similar pictures taken of Donald Trump, of course. This is one of my favorites, where he was giving a speech and they gave him this umbrella and took a similar picture, right? Just getting more at that idea of him being the eclipse baby and having that resonance to eclipses, but also being kind of subsumed into this portal as they depict these black holes and other entities in terms of space in all of the popular media. And really, that is what I ultimately think the eclipse metaphor is getting at least on one level, right? There are so many different layers to this, but in terms of the layer I'm speaking on here right now, the X that these two eclipses made that coincided with Donald Trump's 2 presidential terms is evoking that eclipse resonance so that it gives the subconscious mind the priming to be eclipsed by something else, to be eclipsed by what they have in store for our evolution. And in this way, it's like I was describing in the last video about someone who receives an organ transplant that initially wants to reject it as a foreign invader. The immune system recognizes it as foreign and says, oh, hey, no, get out of here. And they attack it because it's foreign DNA. So they have to take drugs to stop the immune system from destroying the new organ. And I hope you can see how that is a metaphor for what is going on with our minds and the mind control that they are subjected to. We intuitively want to reject all of this propaganda. That's our immune system on that level, functioning correctly, saying, no, I don't want to read any of this mind control. I reject it. But through all of the different tactics that they employ, eventually they break down those defenses in the same way that the drugs will stop the immune system from attacking a foreign organ that has different DNA. This mind programming we are subject to is foreign DNA in those terms. And all the tactics that they use stops our immune system from rejecting it. And we are controlled by it. And part of how that works is through the process of subconscious association, symbolic narratives that go under the surface, that bypass your conscious mind and convince you of something being true and acquiring your tacit acceptance of it being true without your overt conscious knowledge. And in that way, because we have the power to create things with our thoughts, they harness our collective creative ability to bring into existence what they want to bring into existence through us. In this case, their golden age, which will embody this merger of the mind itself with the internet and technology in general. And I say this every time I start talking about this subject. So you might roll your eyes a little bit, but this is why all those sci-fi movies show you the people in the rags outside of the cities who have nothing. Like in Demolition Man, my favorite example. They're in the sewers eating rat burgers because they aren't connected into the system. And that is your perceived fate if you do not join with it. Resistance is futile, as the Borg says it in Star Trek. But they really brought out the X stuff in the lead up to Trump's inauguration to kind of get at this eclipse of the mind idea. They reinforced it. First of all, this is a picture from the actual inauguration where I hope you can see how they set up the rotunda room, remembering that the rotunda itself was struck by lightning in that New Year's Day Sirius ritual. The rotunda was struck on New Year's Eve, which is on the Sirius glyph, and then you had those two psyops on January 1st that involved both Sirius and Donald Trump, which is in relationship to this great American eclipse, Elon Musk and the X. The eclipse of your mind. Now, remember from that video, this is a cyber attack, you see? The X is a cyber attack. So they show you at the inauguration in the rotunda that was struck by lightning in relationship to those two smaller rituals, the X here as it relates to the eclipse of the mind, which will be achieved through the cyber attack, both through Elon Musk's role in it, with Twitter and just in general what he wants to do with Starlink and the chips in the brain and the whole thing, and then also as it will be achieved through Donald Trump, who is kind of all about a cyber attack in a different way, deranging people's minds, very literally, but also doing the things that will be necessary to censor the internet in a way where no one will be able to know the truth many, many decades in the future. Right now it's still possible, but the idea here is to use Donald Trump and his association to everything they've associated him with to eventually change speech laws. I mean, they're already doing this in Britain, which I'll get to. But this is coming in America if we let it happen. They are going to change the First Amendment through Donald Trump. The Ford F-150 Lightning with the ISIS flag comes through Eagle Pass and engages in a terrorist attack in that smaller New Orleans ritual. And then you have the rotunda that was struck by lightning that is on the Sirius glyph from Egypt, itself being struck by lightning, which a few weeks later would then house the inauguration that is normally outside of the building. But in this rare instance, they moved it inside because of the weather, allegedly. And you have them setting it up in this X in the middle of the rotunda because it's about the eclipse of the mind. And then at the rally that they held the night before, Donald Trump brought Elon Musk on the stage to give a little speech that only lasted a few minutes, if that. And he brought out his son, who I neglected to mention the last time I went into this, is named X. So, you see, they're playing out the ritual here by having Musk come on the stage. You have Trump and Musk. Musk, the Tesla Cybertruck, on fire in the shadow of Trump's hotel, or Musk, the cyber attack, in the shadow of Trump's presidency, and X, the great American eclipse, both in terms of what they will do to America, destroying it essentially, and also in terms of what they will do to the mind, destroying it in terms of natural biology so that it can become something new. And I wish I had better technology to see what his son actually held up here. So if any of you guys have that, please let me know. He holds up something and I don't know what it is. But this is X holding up whatever it was, some kind of badge. Because again, these two are the second plane going into the second tower, leading up to the controlled demolition, both of America itself and the mind. The controlled demolition of the two hemispheres. And in the same way, as a sort of fractal of that, we have had the controlled demolition of the two genders, right? You have the two towers, as it were, male and female, being destroyed, and something new is coming up from those ashes as well. Some new formulation of what it means to be human in terms of the traditional male and female genders. And that ties in, of course, to the idea of being a transhuman, as I've gone into many times in the past, because once a human being merges with the internet or technology in some way, it becomes genderless, because reproduction will essentially end at that point. At a certain point in time, like they show you in the Superman series, you reach this state of evolution, and it's like, oh, well, now we just have babies in test tubes. We don't even engage in traditional procreation. That's all done in a lab somewhere through technology. In that way, there is no need for reproduction or genders, traditionally speaking. Donald Trump, as the personification of 9/11, is a Stargate, metaphorically speaking, into this new reality. And accordingly, there are all kinds of articles out there that are focusing on how he has used the term golden age repeatedly the last few days. As CNN says here, Trump wields huge power to kickstart his new golden age. And if you look at certain Christian evangelical interpretations of what the golden age in Revelation is referring to, they will say something along the lines of, we call this the millennium, the coming golden age. It's the kingdom to come, the fulfillment of all the promises God made to Israel in the Old Testament. It's also the bridge of time that will take us into the eternal enclaves of the new heavens, the new earth, and the everlasting capital of New Jerusalem. Now, obviously, the evangelical Christians are being used to achieve this goal, and they don't know it. But anyway, pay attention to the language here. It's the bridge of time. And that's another way that you can perceive Donald Trump here, via his association to the Golden Gate in Jerusalem, and being a Stargate into this New Jerusalem. Understanding that New Jerusalem, to them, those who are in control of this world, will be much different than what a Christian thinks it is, okay? These are not the same things that are being described here, but they use the same language to create confusion and siphon the collective energy of the people who believe in this in that way. They use their mental imagination to create for them. That's how the game is played. So in the context of the bridge of time, it is no accident that Donald Trump was associated with saving TikTok. Now, I can't speak on this as if it's a certainty, but my speculation would be that this was all intentionally done to create the symbolic narrative or the symbolic association that Donald Trump is a time bridge. As TikTok itself stated, on the next day, on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration, in agreement with our service providers, TikTok is in the process of restoring service. We thank President Trump for providing the necessary clarity and assurance to our service providers that they will face no penalties providing TikTok to over 170 million Americans and allowing over 7 million small businesses to thrive. It's a strong stand for the First Amendment and against arbitrary censorship. So this accomplishes two things at once, right? It provides the subconscious narrative, and as the story is being explained, by the media, Donald Trump will most likely give TikTok 75 to 90 days to get its act together and sell half of the parent corporation to America so that they are at least making money off of it, if they're going to allow this alleged Chinese spyware into American phones and computers. So I hope you see, in that way, he's a literal time bridge. He's providing the bridge to TikTok. You see? So on one level, as always, this media story that everyone is up in arms about and giving all of their energy to is charging the symbolic narrative that they are using Donald Trump to achieve. Imagine all that energy that went into TikTok and the whole thing on Saturday night leading into Sunday, leading into his inauguration. All that energy, all those people thinking about TikTok. And then at the last hour, Donald Trump saves it, and all their energy collectively just immediately is infused into both his inauguration and the idea of Trump being a time bridge. In that way, we accept it and allow it to come into fruition because we have no immune system in our mind fighting against this and saying, no, I don't consent. Because it's being done in a way that bypasses the conscious mind. And then also, in a more mundane sense, they're further associating Donald Trump with the First Amendment in terms of being a protector of it, which he obviously is not, but they want that association there so they can work it into the future psyops however they will do that. I don't know. I don't know the script. But in some way, they will involve all of these Trump supporters and everything they have attached to them in whatever is to come that will censor the First Amendment or curtail it in some way. Some kind of Patriot Act 2.0 that establishes a new digital reality, like the original Patriot Act established for security in America and the world in general. And then also remember that the first episode of season 2 of Severance was released on the Friday before his inauguration. Now, you have to understand a little bit about the plot for that to have any weight, but it involves the idea of alters and a sort of MK Ultra type of technology that exists in the future where they can literally divide a person's mind and create two realities within it and transfer the mind from one reality into another as they leave the office and go home and then come back to the office. Do you see the symbolic relevance there of Severance being released in this window in relationship to all of this other stuff? They are severing our mind, you see? It's severance. It's the quantum leap through the Stargate, transferring consciousness from one reality into another. And it's so funny how there was that huge backstory where, oh, production delays and, oh, we really wanted to bring it out sooner than we did, but we just had to wait this long. Here you go. Well, that's why they had to wait this long. It was coordinated to be released right now for this reason. I can't say that for sure. Seems pretty obvious though, right? And that goes back to what Melania was wearing at the inauguration. It's severance of the mind. It's two planes flying into two towers that are destroyed, and a new consciousness is raised between the temples. And there are infinite layers to this thing, so of course that applies to the financial system as well, right? The old world trade system over. As that tied into the COVID-19 ritual and how that reformulated society in general and supply chains and just further entrenched us into the digital reality in a way that would not have been possible naturally. That was an evolutionary leap, which is why Donald Trump's vaccine plan was called Operation Warp Speed, and why the first shot given to the public was on an actual eclipse at the exact midpoint of the 2017 and 2024 so-called Great American Eclipses. There is no other conclusion, guys. I hate to be the one to break it to you. This stuff is planned probably hundreds of years in advance. It's just the way it is. Maybe even longer than that. I don't know. We're dealing with a mind that is something that I can't even describe. Because my mind isn't as smart as it. Oh, speaking of Severance, I'm sure most of you guys have heard this clip before, but I want to play it just to have it in one of my videos. And it should take on a little bit more weight after what I just went into, especially as it relates to Severance. The dreaming mind affected by the subconscious programming being used to create something and quote-unquote wake everyone up.
You know, I just want to share with you one really funny opinion. But there is in Lapland, there is a group of the shamans there who do something called collective dreaming. They will go together in seclusion and do the rituals with the, eating very little food. And
collective dreaming is essentially what the subconscious mind is in human beings, right? It's a collective dream that is going on under the surface while we experience our conscious awareness through the sensory apparatus that decodes everything. It's a collective dream-like entity because we travel somewhere else to access it, somewhere beyond the conscious mind.
Being in solitude for a long time, and they will go and dream the dreams, and the dream have to be collective same dream. So coming out of this dream, this once the shaman told me that actually the best thing happened in this planet right now is Trump to be the president. I said, how is this possible? It's the best thing to happen. He said, yes, because he's so irrational, he's so crazy. That's actually create that awakening, that we finally wake up. Because before it would be another guy, and everything was similar. But he's so different than anything else. So he's the magician who wakes us up. What do you think? That kind of...
Hopefully you have a better idea of what she meant there by referring to him as the magician who will wake everyone up. In other words, he's a Stargate, a monolith at ground zero of the new human mind, transferring consciousness from one place into another, a quantum leap. Or in this case, transferring consciousness itself into their dream of the future, using our imagination to manifest it, which is precisely why they leaked through their controlled opposition assets all of this information in a way that it will play into this eventual plan to create what they want to create. Because part of us had to become aware of what was really going on to scale the thing up a level from what we were used to perceiving as just regular people living in a country. Well, now we're perceiving the world as something much different, being controlled on a much different scale, and just acknowledging that allows the space for this new, bigger thing to come into existence that will be worldwide. And indeed, they used Donald Trump to shake everyone up from their slumber in that way and prime the mind to accept what is coming. All right, I don't want to have her face on the screen anymore. Let's go to something else. But yeah, just going back to the same thing, this is the cyber attack, Musk in the shadow of Trump's presidency, and his son X, the eclipse of both America and the mind.